بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على عبده ورسوله الأمين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد, dear brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu Alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to our Thursday class. And it was supposed to be our 9th class studying the Islamic faith, but inshallah we will devote the whole segment, today's class, to answering some of the questions that we have received from you on Facebook. So Sania says, I want to know whether it is halal to fill the gap between the teeth. The gap between the teeth, we don't have any hadith that restricts it except the hadith of Ibn Mas'ud, may Allah be pleased with him, and it's in the Sahih, and it's a well-known hadith where he tells us how the Prophet ﷺ cursed a number of women for mutilating and changing the creation of Allah Azza wa Jal, such as those who are tattoo artists and those who they practice their art on. So both the recipient and the doer are cursed by Allah Azza wa Jal and cursed by the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. He also cursed those who connect their hair with other hair. Those who do it, the hairdressers, and those who it's done to the clients. Among those, the Prophet ﷺ cursed those who file their teeth. This means that they make a gap between their teeth, as it was a sign of beauty in the past that you have a gap between the front two teeth. So they used to file it. And the Prophet ﷺ followed cursing those who do this by saying, وَالْمُتَفَلِّجَاتِ لِلْحُسْنِ الْمُغَيِّرَاتِ خَلْقَ اللَّهِ. Those who do this gapping or filing to their teeth so that they would look more beautiful, and they change the creation of Allah. This is how Allah created you. Changing it permanently like this would be curse-worthy. And as we see from Sania's question, she's saying about filling the gap, not making one. And usually if there is a gap in the teeth, nowadays this is considered to be an abnormality. However, we have to go to the dentists and we have to ask normal people if such a normal gap is a deformity or it's a normal thing. And the vast majority of people would say it's a normal thing. And maybe some would differ and say that this is more beautiful than filling it up. And hence, that would be prohibited because it's changing and altering the creation of Allah. However, if a dentist or dentists or specialists said that such a gap is bad for your teeth, it allows cavity to grow, it brings plaque or plaque or whatever they call it, and it may store food in it, etc. So filling it up is the correct procedure. In this case, this is totally permissible, inshallah. Madiha says, I had my breakfast while I was fasting, voluntary fast, nafil. After 2 hours, I remember my fast. I continued fasting thereafter. Is my fast valid or I need to make it up again? The Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, whoever eats or drinks while fasting out of forgetfulness, Allah has given him food and drink. What does that mean? It means that this is a gift from Allah to anyone who is fasting and eats or drinks out of forgetfulness. Yet this does not mean if I see someone fasting and he's drinking or eating, it doesn't mean that I should leave him alone because Allah is feeding him and providing him with drinks. No, I have to enjoy virtue and righteousness and forbid evil and vice by telling him, Akhi, you are fasting, so that he would refrain. Therefore, Madiha, this is not affecting your fasting. This is totally okay, inshallah. Muntaha says, I have a question. And to make a long story short, her father-in-law gave her a portion from his house as a mahar, a dowry. And now he has sold the house without her permission, which means that he also sold her portion of the house. And he is blackmailing his son and telling them that he would not give them a penny. The son is obedient, doesn't want to hurt his father's feelings, but at the same time he borrowed, that is the father, from his son 380 lakh rupees, and used it without telling her husband, and spending the money of the house on his new wife and children. What does Islam say about such a problem? First of all, this father-in-law of yours has committed a grave sin by depriving you of your haqq mahar. And Muslims, when they promise, they fulfill. Hypocrites, when they promise, they break. This portion of the house, which was allocated as a mahar, it's your right to claim it. So let's assume that at the time of selling the house, it costed, let's say, $10,000, the portion that is yours. This is a debt that he is supposed to give to you. And actually the debt is on your husband, because he's the one obliged to give you the mahar. So if he failed to deliver the mahar due to his father's betrayal and dishonesty, then it remains with your husband to give it to you whenever is possible, or for you to forgive your husband that. Your father-in-law is a cheater and a liar, and he's a crook. But now you're faced with a problem. Either to take him and your husband to court demanding your right, or to act wisely, and especially when your husband is a good man, to separate your financials from your father-in-law totally. So you advise your husband that you require the mahar from him, and that he has to pay more attention in the future to his family, to his wife and children's rights, rather than squandering and spending off his wealth on his father, who is a spendthrift and does not fear Allah Azza wa Jal, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Madiha again says, the sealed nectar by Safiyuddin Mubarak Furi, is it authentic? The answer is, the books of Seerah are not all 100% authentic, as in the case of the books of Hadith, for example. So when you say, is Bukhari authentic? Is Sahih Muslim authentic? I said, yeah, no doubt in that. However, the books of Tafsir, the books of Seerah, these books, due to the fact that they collect a lot of narrations and they do not implement the rules of schools or scholars of Hadith, therefore you may find things that are authentic, things that are not. However, in general, the sealed nectar or the Rahiq al-Makhtum is a well-accepted book in Seerah. And to my knowledge, it won the award of King Faisal's award for service of Islam. And it is among the widely accepted books of Seerah for being concise and at the same time for having mostly authentic narrations and stories in it. Therefore, inshallah, I would be safe in saying that yes, you can go ahead and read it. Yusuf Siddiqui says, how to reply to non-Muslims when they say Assalamu Alaikum. Should we just say Wa Alaikum? The answer is yes. The Prophet ﷺ, whenever the Jews used to come to greet him and say Assalamu Alaikum, they alter the Salam, they would say Wa Alaikum. And the Prophet ﷺ prohibited us from initiating Salam. So we may never say to a non-Muslim Assalamu Alaikum. But if they say to us, and they start by saying Assalamu Alaikum, we may reply by saying Wa Alaikum, full stop. And this is the most authentic opinion, though there are difference of opinions among scholars, but this is the most authentic and closest to the Sunnah of the Prophet alayhi as-salatu was-salam. Engineer Iqtidar says, if parents are forcing daughter for khul', is that khul' valid by court? First of all, the issues of divorce and khul', the parents of both sides have no say in it. So the father of the wife has no say in demanding divorce or khul' for his daughter. This is something between a man and his wife. So the question doesn't make any sense. If parents are forcing daughter, is that valid by court? The answer is no. Unless the daughter goes and demands khul' in front of the judge without any indication that she's being forced by her parents. The judge is a human being. He sees a woman coming and demanding khul' from her husband. He does his due diligence, talks to the husband, talks to the girl, try to reconcile, but she's adamant and insisting on khul'. How would he know that she's forced? There's no possibility. So if she applies for khul' and is granted it, she has no right to come after 1 month and say, Judge, I was forced. Prove that to us. And he can't accept what she's saying without any proof. There is, and we spoke about this before in some of our courses, and we said that claiming that a person is forced to divorce or to do something haram or to break an oath, the claim of being forced has to be real and genuine. Otherwise, it won't be accepted. For example, a person claims that he was forced to divorce his wife. That's why he divorced her. We say, how were you divorced? And he replies by saying, someone said to me, if you don't divorce your wife, I'm going to throw rocks on you. So the judge says, did he have rocks around him? He said, no. Was he capable of throwing rocks? He said, no, he's so thin, he cannot carry rocks. So why did you divorce? She said, he forced me. No, this is not acceptable. Someone says, my wife forced me to divorce her. She said, if you don't divorce me, tomorrow I'm going to throw myself in the river. This divorce is invalid. Actually, the divorce, if taken place, is valid. Why? He wasn't forced. She threatened to throw herself in the river tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow, not today. So this is not ikrahun mulji. This is not forced or pressured forcing, or I don't know what, how do you, that doesn't leave you any room to maneuver. Someone has a knife to your neck. If you don't divorce, I'm gonna slash your throat. This is real threat. A woman on the 10th floor hanging from the balcony or threatening to throw herself from the window, and I know that she would do such a thing. This is a valid force or a valid excuse to do whatever you want, and it doesn't take effect. Therefore, if the daughter was not forced, as I've explained, to ask for khul', then the khul' is valid. If she was forced by real threat, genuine threat, that is going to happen inevitably, in this case the khul' is not valid, but she has to clarify all of this to the judge. Jannah says, the question is not clear. Sheikh, always say Bismillah when you start do work. That's why shaitan stay away from you. How about the money? If you count, also must say Bismillah. I don't think she's asking me is that we should say Bismillah before start any work. No, this is not true. We don't say Bismillah before everything we do. However, sometimes scholars say it is recommended to begin things by saying Bismillah, halal things. But it's not mandatory, definitely. And likewise, when counting money, you don't say Bismillah because it's not from the Sunnah, but if you say it, there is no harm in doing it unless you think it's a form of worship you're getting closer to Allah with. Now, for those who complain, and I've seen few cases like this, where people living in a room on their own, nobody's in the house, nobody has access to the house, in their living room, in their own cupboards or dresser, they place money and come back 5 minutes later to find it gone. And I know close people to me. I know one of the well-known da'is here in Jeddah, and she's in her 60s. She's a very good, highly decorated student of knowledge, that she would suffer from this every other day. And she had lost literally tens of thousands of riyals. And she's gone crazy. She says, I don't know what's happening. And I told her that this is jinn. So she says, I recite Al-Baqarah, I recite this, I observe my adhkar. But they steal the money. Sometimes they return some of it. And sometimes I don't keep any cash in my house. I simply take it downstairs to my daughter's house or to my neighbor's house and keep all my money with there. And everything is fine. Only when I put it in my purse, in my dresser, or in my bedroom, it's gone. So I recommended her to say Bismillah whenever she places it. And with the grace of Allah, it stops. it stopped. And only every blue moon it returns and she says, I forgot to say Bismillah. So Bismillah is something that we begin things with, not as mandatory, but rather as asking Allah for blessing of things. And again, it's not a form of worship, meaning that it's a sunnah, but the Prophet encouraged us to say Bismillah in almost generally speaking things that we do. So I believe that it is not mandatory, but if you say it, that would be good, inshallah. Sheikh Jabin, is it prohibited to use iron ornaments for both men and women? There are many hair clips and pins which are of iron. Should we also not use them? The answer is no. There is no problem in that, inshallah. And to my recollection, the hadith where the Prophet ﷺ prohibited an iron ring, saying that this is the ornament of the people of hell, I believe that this is not authentic hadith, or it was abrogated. Because in the other hadith, when the man wanted to marry a woman who proposed to the Prophet and the Prophet ﷺ rejected her, the man said, let me marry her if you don't want her. So he asked him whether he had any financial assets to provide as a mahar, as a dowry. And in the end, the Prophet said, go and look even for a ring made of iron, which means that the hadith, it is the ornament of the people of hell, is not authentic, or at least abrogated, and Allah knows best. Zayd Zubair says, is there any dalil for reciting basmala before any surah? Someone told me that there is no dalil, that basmala and isti'adha is enough. First of all, making bold statements like this is very easy. If this individual is a highly decorated scholar of Islam, we would say, okay, maybe let's look into it. But when you look at saying Bismillah in the schools of thought is normal, accepted. Some say it's mandatory, some say it's not. Some say it is part of Al-Fatiha, and some say it is not. And the most authentic opinion is that Al-Basmala. I know some of the people are saying, what is Al-Basmala? Al-Basmala is saying Bismillah Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. This is known Basmala. And Tasbih is saying Subhanallah. Tahleel is saying La ilaha illallah. Takbir is Allahu Akbar. Tahmeed is saying Alhamdulillah. Isti'adha is to say A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Hawqalah is to say La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. This is how the Muslims refer to these phrases as a form of shortening them. So Basmala, the most authentic opinion is that it's a separate ayah of its own, dividing between surahs with the exception of Surah 8 and 9, Surah Al-Anfal and Surah At-Tawbah. Other than that, every single surah, it has Basmala in the beginning. And Surah Al-Naml has the Basmala in the middle, where Sulaiman, peace be upon him, was corresponding with Sheba, the queen of, I think her name is Sheba, I don't know, the queen of Yemen. So, to come and claim that Basmala is not to be recited before the surah, this is outrageous. There are a hadith related to Ibn Abbas, may Allah be pleased with him and with his father. And some say it is mawquf on Sa'id ibn Jubayr, the student of Ibn Abbas, that the Prophet, that we, the companions, did not know that, or the Prophet did not know that the surah has finished until Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim was recited when being revealed. That this to announce the beginning of a new surah. I'm not sure of how authentic this narration is, but it is well known in the books of jurors of Islam, scholars of Islam, and hence it is sufficient for us to open the Mus'haf, the Quran, and find Bismillah in every beginning of the surah. So for someone to come up with a bold claim that this is not part of the surah or it's not part of the Quran and we don't have to recite it, we just say A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem, this is outrageous. Anas ibn Malik, may Allah be pleased with him, said, I prayed behind the Prophet ﷺ, Abu Bakr, Umar and Uthman, and they all began their recitation in Salat with Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, while acknowledging that Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim and Isti'adha to be recited before. And Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. Amna, she says, will the pure or good souls meet each other in the barzakh? This is an issue of dispute among scholars, and the most authentic opinion is that it is not backed up by authentic hadiths, and hence we cannot confirm such a thing. But let us take this argument to another level. What are the possibilities? One, that souls meet in the barzakh. Two, they don't meet. What impact does either one have on us, on our ibadah, on us getting closer to Allah Azza wa Jal? Zero. So why do we occupy our time and researching over an issue that has no value? Why do we waste time asking such questions that would not benefit us? Yeah, it's fun to know that, oh, my late father will be meeting my late grandmother. But without evidence, this is fruitless. It has no benefit, and Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. Yahya Buhari says, please, what is the ruling on countries that are not using Sharia, but are both Muslims and Christians? On the Day of Judgment, will all the Ummah go to hellfire, as claimed by one scholar? And if so, what is the way out? Well, this is the core reason we are studying the Islamic faith, the Aqidah, so that we understand our Aqidah well. And through what we had studied earlier, and through the course of fiqh, the Islamic fiqh we have done, we learn that it is not for individuals to grade and label people whether they are among the people of hell or heaven. So what you're saying, Yahya, is that there is a scholar who claims that all of the ummah will go to hell. Definitely this quote unquote so-called scholar is not a scholar. He's a deviant person, and he is most likely from Al-Khawarij, who label Muslims as kafir and who claim that such Muslims will be abiding in hell for eternity. What kind of audacity this person has to just say the whole ummah will be in hell. Now, the issue of implementing Sharia, this is one of the most important rulings in Islam. Inil hukmu illa lillah. The ruling is for Allah Azza wa Jal. The legislation is for Allah Azza wa Jal. And whoever legislates with other than what Allah has revealed, then he is among the kafirun, al-zalimun, al-fasiqun, as mentioned in chapter 5, verse 44, 45, and 47. Yet, this is an issue of great dispute among scholars, whether it is kufr duna kufr, major kufr, minor kufr, or it is an act of apostasy that if a person does it automatically, he's bound to hell and he's exiting the fold of Islam. This is what we will come to discuss inshallah later on as we are progressing in the Islamic faith course, where we spoke about what the author said, the first two of the things that nullifies a person's Islam. We will come inshallah, hopefully on Monday, to discuss and to explain the difference of opinion among scholars when it comes to legislating other than with Sharia law, which would inshallah hopefully benefit all of us. But in general, there is a difference between legislating and ruling, and by being a citizen who has no power to object or reject. So there are the legislators, those who come and say halal, haram, to something that goes against Sharia. So they are overriding Sharia law, overriding Allah's law. This is one category. Then we have the rulers who would implement such legislations, regardless whether they are okay with it, they've ordered it, they don't know about it. And this is something different. We can't paint with the same brush. It's different when someone says, no, this man-made law is better than Allah's law. This is kufr. You don't have to be a rocket scientist. But someone says, I believe that Allah's law is supreme, ultimate, and this man-made law is junk. But what can I do? I'm forced to implement it, otherwise I'll be kicked out of office, I'll be this, I'll be that. This is separate. And the third category is us. When someone says to us, Simon says, do this. We know it's haram, we know it's against Sharia, but we can't rebel, we can't reject or object. So the least we could do is not to obey, not to confront, but not to obey, unless we come to the least of the two evils. So committing the least of the two evils, this is judgmental and depends on the issue. But generally speaking, what this so-called scholar said is totally bogus, and no one can just simply paint with the same brush every category of the society and put them all in hell. Rina Tony says, is this rewarding to give money to beggars? It may encourage them begging. Does Islam like this, sir? First of all, beggars, the vast majority of them are professionals. So the recommendation is not to give them, because this would only make them grow in number and make them more professional. However, if someone gives any beggar, whether professional or not, money, is he rewarded? The answer is yes. Because his intention.
Okay, I found this on the web for Who Are the Dancers, yes.
Who
Check it out.
is talking to you, Siri? Wallahi, this is weird. It shows you how good Apple is. So, if you give a beggar money, this is according to your intention. There's no problem in doing it because you're dealing with Allah. And this is why we have a lot of similar cases in Sharia where a person is rewarded according to his intention. For example, Sahih Imam Bukhari, the Prophet said, alayhi salam, while Isa ibn Maryam, peace be upon him, Jesus Christ, was walking, he saw a man stealing. So he caught him red-handed and he said to him, you stole. And the man said, Wallahi, I didn't steal. Like every other burglar would do. They would swear, lying. Isa, peace be upon him, said, I believe in Allah, because you took an oath in the name of Allah. You swore, I believe in Allah, and I falsify my eyes. I will accuse my eyes that I did not see what I thought I saw. And he let him go. And the Prophet also, ﷺ, ruled a case similar to that. When a man went to the masjid and found someone sitting by the masjid door before Fajr, thinking that he's a beggar, so he took money and gave it to him. And then discovered that this man was his own son. So he said to him, give me back my money. I didn't intend it to you. I wanted to give it for charity. And the son said, well, I'm poor and I'm deserving of the money and I got it. I'm not going to give it back to you. So they both went to the Prophet ﷺ. And this is a clear indication that taking your father, taking your mother to court to demand your rights is not part of being undutiful. This is my God-given right. So many people ask me, our father died and mother is refusing to sell the house and divide the inheritance. And she says, when I die, you do whatever you want. So what shall we do? We need the money. I say, take her to court. They say, oh, it's being undutiful and being not a good son. No, this is your God-given right. This is what courts are made for. Your mother's judgment is impaired, is wrong, is un-Islamic. Anyhow, so the two went to the Prophet ﷺ. And the father said, oh Prophet of Allah, I gave money as a charity, but put it in the wrong place. And the boy said, oh Prophet of Allah, I got charity that I am deserving for. So the Prophet said, ﷺ, to the man, what you have given in charity is registered as charity, and what you have taken as a poor person is accepted. You keep the money and your charity is registered. What does this tell you? It tells you that the intention is important. If your intention is to please Allah Azza wa Jal, even if this man might be a professional beggar, and there's a possibility that he is really needy, in this case there is no sin on you, and this is totally legit bi'idhnillahi Azza wa Jal. Afrina's question is gone. Faiza Saeed says, if someone I helped once financially keeps coming to me again and again for different needs, shall I continue helping her in my capacity, or can I excuse politely? This is totally up to you. It is as described earlier. What you do for the sake of Allah is for the sake of Allah. You'll be rewarded for that. But if you are inclined that this person is using you, and you've seen evidences that she's using the money for things that are not as she said, in this case, you have all the right to apologize diplomatically and not give her anything. The biggest fear I have is that you continue to give while doubtful in your heart, and maybe snapping one day and spoiling everything that you've done by saying, didn't I give you so much? Why are you abusing my money? Why are you asking me? Every time you ask me, I give you. Allahu Akbar. This is a catastrophe. You should not give her anything if you're going to reach that level, because this is known as al-man, and it is one of the major sins of Islam. The Prophet said 3 will never enter Jannah, and Allah would not speak to him, not look at them, and not have mercy upon them. Al-musbilu wal-mannan, the one who has his garment or trousers below his ankle, and al-mannan, the one who always goes to the people who he had helped in the past and remind them of his help. Didn't I give you this and that? Didn't I help you admit your child in school? Didn't? A'udhu billah. This is a major sin. So I would say it is up to you totally. If you feel that she's sincere and she's in need and she thinks well of you, then Allah has made her a door and a gate for you to Jannah. The more you help her, you enter Jannah because she's needy. But if you're inclined that she's lying or using you, well, you fool me once, shame on you. You fool me twice, shame on me. Kinza says, some people say you shouldn't take a black cat as a pet because black cats are evil and they're sometimes jinn and all. Is it true or something else about black cats not okay? There is nothing in the Sharia that says that black cats are prohibited or haram. There's nothing in the Quran or the Sunnah that states that they are jinn. Some scholars like Ibn Taymiyyah, if I remember correctly, said that black cats might be jinn, but not all of them or not most of them. The possibility when a jinn would transform or appear in the shape of another animal or a cat, that it would be black, but there's no evidence supporting this. So therefore, there's nothing wrong in taking a black cat as a pet. Then this question is from, I don't know who. For what type of illness is ruqya done? I mean, for spiritual illness, or ruqya can be done for physical illness like any disease, cancer, infertility, HIV, HBV, and any of the like such. Ruqya can be done to any physical or mental or spiritual illness. Ruqya is a form of healing. So it is a set of verses of the Quran, Prophet's hadith, alayhi salatu wasalam, or general dua that has a good meaning. This is what's ruqya. So it's good for cancer, it's good for your throat ache. If you're infected with corona, may Allah protect us all, you can do ruqya and it will help. It is helpful from black magic, evil eye, envy, jinn possession, depression, anxiety, panic attacks, the whole 9 yards. Because it is throwing everything in your possession to Allah Azza wa Jal, expressing your poverty and humility, seeking His healing and cure through these verses of the Quran and the good words, and Allah knows best. Rabia Ahmed says, can you please kindly clarify a dua which is authentic to recite inside my salah? Allahumma I think this dua of Umar, Allahumma inni as'aluka shahadatan fi sabilika wa arjuka mawtan fi harami rasulika, or something like that. I also would like to know if randomly just simply making simple dua saying Rabbi irhamhuma kama rabbayani saghiran, or on every thought of my deceased father, can it be said or does it become innovation? First of all, the dua of Umar is not a sunnah. So this is a random dua that Umar may have said, may Allah be pleased with him. And if the narration is authentic, people were wondering how could he be martyred in the cause of Allah in Medina and die in Medina. because there are no wars within the vicinity. And when he was stabbed by Abu Lu'lu'ah al-Majusi, may Allah curse him, and died in Medina, they understood the manifestation of the dua. Nevertheless, you can ask Allah Azza wa Jal during your salat whatever you want. You have debts, ask Allah to pay off your debts. You have illnesses in your body, ask Allah to cure them. You fear something, ask Allah to protect you. You wish for something, ask Allah to grant you. And whenever you remember your parents and you say, رَبِّ ارْحَمْهُمَا كَمَا رَبَّيَانِي صَغِيرًا, there's nothing wrong in that. That's a general dua, and it's an ayah mentioned in the Quran, and there's no innovation in that. And if you maintain saying this dua in sujood, again, there is nothing wrong in that as well, and Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. Sharer Z. Zubair says, I'm asking Aqiqah, what are the sum of its importance? Jazakallahu khairan. This is a highly recommended sunnah. The Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, kullu ghulamin marhunun bi'aqiqatih. Every child born is depending on his aqiqah. Some may translate marhun as mortgaged or pawned. So every child that is born is dependent on his aqiqah, because his aqiqah would, bi'idhnillah, entitle him to intercede. If he dies as an infant, he will intercede for his parents in Jannah. And this is a highly recommended sunnah that the Prophet ﷺ did himself for his grandson Al-Hasan, when he slaughtered 2 rams on behalf of Al-Hasan. And he instructed us to do that on the 7th day of the child's birth, to name the child on the 7th day, to circumcise the boy, male child, and to shave the head of the newborn, whether girl or boy, and weigh the hair that was shaved and give the equivalent of its weight in silver in charity. So all of these are part of the recommended things to do, and Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. Mahbub says, is my prayer valid if I do not elongate وَلَضَّالِّينَ in Surah Al-Fatiha? This has no impact on the validity of your Fatiha or your prayer. So if I say غَيْرِ الْمَغْضُوبِ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَضَّالِّينَ, that's it. Prayer is valid. The most best way of saying it is to say it with tajweed. غَيْرِ الْمَغْضُوبِ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَضَّالِّينَ. But this is not mandatory, so say ضالين. That's it. It does the job. Zaid Zubair says, how did the Prophet ﷺ fought hypocrites? Well, we know that the Prophet ﷺ did not fight the hypocrites with the sword like disbelievers, because the hypocrites pretend to be Muslims while inside they're non-Muslims. However, as Muslims, the Prophet is our role model. He gave us the way not to treat the hypocrites. So if it were to him, he would have killed them all because they're disbelievers. But he didn't, because he's giving us a lesson. Such hypocrites who pretend to be Muslims, we can only deal with them with what shows to us. So they pretend to be Muslims, we take that as it is, as face value. What is in their heart is up to their Lord Azza wa Jal to hold them to account. Nevertheless, the Prophet ﷺ fought the hypocrites by showing us their characteristics, their signs, what they're well known of, how they behave. And he told us to be aware of how they act so that we don't fall in the same category. Allah described them to us in the Quran clearly. Lazy when they pray, they never remember Allah except seldomly, they are neither to the believers nor to the disbelievers, and they're in between. They plot, they betray, they break promises, they do a lot of things. So these were all ways of fighting them. Once you know them, you can be aware from them, and you can protect yourself and Iman from falling into their category. So scholars say that we can only fight the hypocrites by rhetoric, by exposing them, by showing the whole world. And this is nowadays extremely needed, because the hypocrites now are not individuals. They are countries. They are institutions. They are people that are backed by the media. And they have influence everywhere. And you can see when someone does a sin, and we are all sinful, but you can see when someone is a hypocrite and trying to undermine Islam, sides with the Jews and the Christians against the Muslims, prefers their festivals, takes part in their religious rituals, whether they're Hindus or Christians or Jews, and they participate with them. If this is not hypocrisy, what is? So you have to expose such people, and this is how we fight the hypocrites. Mashuk bin Abrar says, I've heard a fatwa that if a person starts a nafil act of worship, that is nafil prayer or fasting, and doesn't finish that act, then it is wajib, it is mandatory for that person to complete it later on, meaning that he has to make it up. Is there any evidence? The answer is no. This is not true, especially with fasting and praying. Because the Prophet ﷺ said to us that when a person is fasting and he's invited to a meal, he may eat, meaning break his fast, or he may make dua. It's according to his wish. And the scholars all agree that a person fasting voluntary fast is his own commander, whether to continue or to break it. Prayer is the same thing, voluntary. Now Hajj is different, because once you assume ihram and you begin in your umrah or in your Hajj, there's no going back. You have to complete it. And if you break it by intercourse or something like that, it is mandatory for you to make it up the following year. But this is a different story, and Allahu Azza wa Jal knows best. Bin Abdullah says, Sheikh, my question is why when I'm going to do salat, I feel anxious. Please answer. Bin Abdullah, how would I know? Yahi, you need to go to a psychiatrist. You need to sit and analyze yourself. I don't know you. And I don't know why would a person feel anxious before going to salat. There are gazillion reasons. You may be afraid of the dark and you're praying in a place that is dark. You may be afraid that you'll nullify your prayer. Maybe you have urine incontinence, or you continuously pass gas. Maybe you have so many sins and you're afraid of meeting Allah Azza wa Jal and pray. I have no idea, akhi. Whatever the reason is, no one can say why except you. So you need to sit with a psychiatrist or with a counselor who would listen and ask you various questions, and then you may find the answer, and Allah knows best. Ola Fimi says, if I mistakenly pray suhri prayer 1 hour before its time, is my prayer valid? I don't know what suhri is. So let us assume that it is one of the 5 daily prayers. If you pray them an hour before its time, the prayer is invalid. If you pray it 1 minute before the adhan, the prayer is still invalid. Farzana bint Farouk says, or bint Fakhrul, has a number of questions. Number 1, if a sister who has never been married wakes up at Fajr time and sees vaginal discharge and is confused whether this is from wet dream or it is natural discharge, what should she do? Nothing. The default is that she did not have an nocturnal emission. This is the default. So we would not go to saying that this is semen unless there is evidence. So if it's the normal amount of vaginal discharges, then this is vaginal discharges. But if you find a lot of it, which is unusual, then this is most likely to be nocturnal emission or many, and you have to make ghusl. Number 2, the dua of intimacy, is it to be said by the man only? The answer is yes. The wife is not to say it because this is not from the sunnah and it's innovation. Number 3, does the jinn and the angels that stay with me know my thoughts in my mind or my intentions? The answer is yes. Allah has given them this ability. Fatima Afreen says, if we find a torn back note, if we find a torn back note in our wallet, which can't be returned to the owner who gave it to us, is it permissible to bend and buy things without telling the shopkeeper about the tear? This is a banknote. Some banknotes has serial number. If this is torn, usually this is worthless because the bank itself would not take it. But sometimes the torn is so little. Shops don't prefer it, but it is totally fine in banks, in transactions. If it is the first, then it is totally prohibited to do this so that the shopkeeper would not see the torn and he would be fooled like you were fooled and buying it. This is cheating and it's haram. But if it's not something that is rejected, it's totally legit and accepted, there's no problem in doing that. Even if the shopkeeper does not like it, this is his problem because it's still a valid currency. Akhtar says, if a person sometimes feels lazy or feel like have to do recommended ibadah, voluntary prayers, etc., like it or not, whether he likes it or not, to earn rewards, as it misses tranquility sometimes, is it a sign of hypocrisy? If I understand your question correctly, you're saying that if I pray anticipating the reward, but I don't like it, so I'm doing it because I'm forced to doing it in anticipation of the reward, and I lack tranquility in it. Different to a person who loves it and he does it out of conviction and he loves Allah, etc. Am I sinful? Is it a sign of hypocrisy? The answer is no. It's a sign of weakness of Iman. Because we know that the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, that the Jannah is surrounded by hateful things. And hellfire is surrounded by desires. So these hateful things, people by nature find them difficult to wake up early in the morning after only a couple of hours of sleep and to walk to the masjid when it's cold or when it's too hot, and you may not find the taste and the beauty of that. But this is not a sign of hypocrisy because you're doing it for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal, and Allah knows best. Rashid Kasmani says, can we pray 2 dua al-qunut in the last rak'ah of witr, that is Allahumma hdina fi man hadayt, as Allahumma inna nasta'inuka? Okay, So the first dua, akhi, Rashid, is the dua of the Prophet ﷺ, which he had taught to Al-Hasan. Allahumma hadina fi man hadayt wa afini fi man afayt wa tawallani fi man tawallayt, which Al-Hasan, the son of Ali ibn Abi Talib, came to his grandfather when he was like 7-8 years of age, asking him to teach him a dua to recite in qunut. So this is authentic. The other dua, Allahumma inna nasta'inuka wa nastaghfiruka wa nastahdik wa natubu ilayk wa natawakkalu alayk, all of this is not related to the Prophet ﷺ. This is Umar's dua, may Allah be pleased with him, and hence abiding by the sunnah is far better. But if you do the other one, there's no problem, inshaAllah, and Allah knows best. Finally, Afrina Khalida says, can I recite any of my favorite verses of the Quran before I make dua to Allah in my sujood? The answer is no. It is prohibited to recite the Quran in sujood or ruku'. The only exception is if the dua you're making in sujood is from the Quran. So if I'm in sujood and I would like to recite the Fatiha, this is totally haram. If I like to recite Qul Huwallahu Ahad, totally haram. Ayat al-Kursi, totally haram. But if I want to recite ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما, no problem. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار, no problem, because these are dua, not Quran. So reciting Quran is totally prohibited. Making dua from the Quran is totally legit, and Allahu Azza wa Jal knows best. This is all the time we have, and until we meet next Monday, I leave you fi amanillah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.